Despite billions invested in AI, most enterprise initiatives still fail to deliver ROI. Nearly 95% of organizations remain stuck in the so-called AI failure zone, where impressive tools generate minimal business impact. The key to success? Context-driven AI that's tied to business workflows, customers, and outcomes. Check out this episode of Future Proof to learn from AI analyst Ray Wang and Sugar CRM CEO David Roberts about the path forward for enterprise AI.
The future is here already. It's just not evenly distributed. Yet. Today's world teems with innovation. The nexus of hardware, software, and human ingenuity promises a revolution in possibilities. What does tomorrow look like? Witness Future Proof.
Truly, Eric Kavanaugh here with an all-star cast, folks. I'm going to be talking to the CEO of Sugar CRM. I think they're better than Salesforce, quite frankly. It's easier to use, it's more intuitive, and they've been around for a while too. So they've got some success stories under the belt, and they're doing a bit of a retooling, I hear. So we'll hear from David Roberts and my buddy Ray Wang. This guy's on TV every other day talking about what's happening in the world, and there's a lot going on, folks. I mean, goodness gracious, this AI stuff. Model Context Protocol, MCP servers, never seen anything take off faster than that. Like one day there were none, now there are like 100 of them out there. What does that mean? It means companies are trying to get their data into the AI engines to generate positive results. And that's what all the action is about these days. How do we ground these large language models? Because, of course, they're trained on a wide corpus of data. They're not trained on your enterprise data, and that's what you want them to be trained on. So what do? A lot of people do RAG architectures, retrieval augmented generation. Some people are doing agentic, where you have a little agent talking to the MCP and then to the LLM and to your enterprise data and kind of stitching stuff together. Probably the best example I've heard is companies that use a knowledge graph in that matrix somewhere, because that carries information about relationships, and that's really important for getting it right for the semantics, the knowledge that you're trying to pass through. But there are lots of ways you could do it, and of course the models change every other freaking day. That's also an issue. When the models change, like when ChatGPT said, okay, this is the new version, and no, you can't use the old versions, and lots of people were like, huh? What was that all about? And of course, Sam Altman said the era of large language models was over 2 years ago before trying to raise a few $1 trillion. So, there's that. But without any further ado, David Roberts, Sugar CRM, welcome to Inside Analysis. Tell us, what are you guys working on?
Hey, Eric. Thank you so much for having me. We're working on helping sellers sell better. I've been in and around CRM for 30 years, and this promise that a CRM platform can actually help sellers do a better job managing their business has been something that's a little bit elusive. I think we as managers like the comfort that comes from seeing a pipeline or understanding a forecast. It gives us this illusion of control that we can actually influence sales results. And what we're doing at Sugar is trying to crack that code once and for all, be able to turn the value equation on its head and help sellers get more out of a CRM than they put into it.
Yeah, well, that's what an idea there, right? Like get some value from that inference. You're getting inference from your CRM essentially, right? That's
Right.
the idea. You said something before the show that really struck me. You talked about precision selling. And as I was mentioning to you, these LLMs, they really like when you use interesting phrases and whole sentences and concepts. It's not like Google. With Google, it was all about the SEO, search engine optimization, which was usually a scam. I mean, let's be honest. Most of the time people did stuff for an SEO, they were trying to trick the algorithm. They weren't trying to be genuine to the algorithm. They were trying to trick it. So I'm actually kind of happy to see SEO fade. I think it was, sort of 50% real, 50% nonsense. But this precision selling really strikes me as very interesting. Could you describe what you mean by that?
Yeah, well, the way we think we accomplish what I described a minute ago is by offering sellers a precision selling platform. And
Hmm.
that means that, especially for our ideal customer profile, if you're out there in the manufacturing world and you're sitting on top of a massive product catalog, a huge distribution network, a ton of customers, it's impossible to stay on top of it all every day. And if you're one of those sellers, you act as a marketing person some days, you're communicating out to your customer base. You act as a service person some days, you get pulled into escalations from your customers.
Hmm.
And it's really hard to stay on top of everything. And where we see AI and LLMs really helping is guiding the seller to the right uh, step. I think I said earlier, Eric, that like just like sellers receive leads from marketing and they qualify and accept or reject leads, what we're doing is offering sellers recommendations and they can equally accept or reject those recommendations. And those recommendations are built off of understanding the breadth of order data, customer data, opportunity data, and guiding sellers to that precise next step.
See, this is it's very encouraging because number one, this was my thought. Gosh, maybe a year or two ago, maybe longer. I thought to myself, I think most of the value of AI is going to manifest through recommendations that are tailored on a company's activities, the data of their prospects, and the seller's behavior. And then also they're going to just give an opportunity. So the second cute big thing here is that the human being is still the guardrail. The human being still makes the decision. You were talking about before the show, Tony Stark, how it's still him inside this uniform. So he's got all his intuitions, all his feelings, all his ideas and creativity and energy. And it's really emboldened by the AI around him, right?
Yeah, I've said for a couple decades that selling is about the transference of belief, right? You as a seller, you as a CEO believe in what you're doing. You transfer that belief. You bring people along with you. That's what selling is. And I don't think, especially for B2B enterprise software, that goes away. I think selling continues to be the transference of belief. So it needs that human with that intuition, with the understanding of the market. And I think our precision selling platform can be the Iron Man suit to Tony Stark. It can help them be stronger, faster, more powerful, but it's still the human inside making those key decisions about how to relate to the person they're trying to relate to.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Ray Wang, I'll bring you in, Constellation Research. So, Ray, what do you think about this precision selling concept? I think it's a very clever term that really speaks to what they're trying to provide. And I think the LLMs are going to like it. What do you think?
I think you're not only getting precision selling, you're also getting the ability to actually choose your own adventure. And so both are happening at the same time. So precision selling, super contextual, semantic, amazing. But choose your own adventure means I can start from any point and get to any part of any journey and come back. And so those two things are actually creating what we're calling exponential efficiency and infinite possibilities in this agentic AI world, which means you can start anywhere, do anything, get the precision that you're talking about. But more importantly, we're getting ambient experiences on the back end, which means they're contextual, they're serving them up, and more importantly, they're natural. You're not even thinking about it. So all those little nudges, all those facial expressions we were talking about earlier, all the context, our intonation, it's all being used to actually make that precision selling more possible.
Yeah, and that's what I picked up on as well. If you look back, you see technologies like Gong, for example, was one of the first where I heard where they're listening in. And this is why you now have Read AI and Fireflies and Otter AI and all these tools are attaching to your video conferencing and using the audio, not just the transcript, but to your
Yep.
point, the engagement level and even the tone of voice, the confidence level. I mean, that is very exciting because, like I was saying, SEO, usually SEO tactics were trying to game the system. But now I think we're getting closer to where a system will genuinely try to ascertain authenticity, and I think that kind of rings true, to use the old expression. What do you think, Ray?
Oh, it definitely does. And what we're getting to a point is, it's so easy to create deep fakes. It's so hard to figure out authenticity. And what we're actually getting to is the ability to extract that signal from the noise. And more importantly, figure out, is it real? Is it not real? Do we care about authenticity? Maybe you do care about authenticity and you're willing to pay more for authenticity. That's also going to emerge.
That's interesting. And you brought up a really good point, too, about being able to go anywhere in the journey. And I think this is a really critical point to understand in the evolution of business and the nexus of business and technology. Because what is CRM? Every software application you use is automating something. That's what it does. It automates something, whether it's word processing or analytics or whatever. But what's interesting now is that the walls are sort of caving to the APIs, if you will, and you can now crawl across systems from the sales world to the marketing world to the admin world to the projections world world, projections and forecasting and all that kind of stuff. And that's when people really learn. And I think that's one of the most compelling values that these LLMs bring, especially the better they get at avoiding hallucinations, is you can become an expert in almost any topic pretty darn quickly. And that's good for everyone because I think most of the problems that occur in organizations happen due to lack of communication, lack of clear objectives and processes, and just personality issues. And a lot of that stuff goes out the window if you really can learn about what other people are doing. Because when you know what it takes to do the sale, then you're more respectful of that process. It's when you don't know that you start asking questions and you presume people aren't doing their stuff. So I think that's very exciting. Maybe, David, I'll throw it over to you. I think in this new LLM enabled world, AI enabled world, you're going to get marketers who know more about sales than ever before. You're going to get administrators who know more about creative projects, and everyone is going to have a better understanding of what everyone else is doing. And that is good news for the business. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is. The strange thing about sellers is they're this odd combination of hugely optimistic. You've got to be in sales. You wake up every day like you lost yesterday, you're going to go win today, and productively paranoid, right? You've got to be productively paranoid too. You got to be constantly wondering yourself, what's the next objection? How could this deal go wrong? So this odd combination of optimism and productive paranoia, I think, is something at the heart of every good salesperson. So when you offer them up recommendations, they gotta be believable. Right? Just like when you go into search today and you can click in to understand the source of the information that ChatGPT is offering, that's what sellers need to see. They need to be able to believe that whatever you're recommending is grounded in something that they can believe in, right? Because they want to make sure they're going to look good in front of their customer. They're going to look good in front of their prospect. They're not going to like suggest somebody go buy a product that they already own and make them look stupid. So that context and giving people guiding them to that answer is really important.
Yeah, that's a good point. Go ahead, Ray.
Context is key. That's exactly the point, right? Once you have context, authenticity, you can do a lot more with it. And this is really why I get really excited about where that future is, because we've been trying to get to this personalization for years, not just on the consumer side, but now on the selling side, and more importantly, trying to create that match. And we're actually going to get to a point where you have multi-sided marketplaces selling, brokering context so that you can actually get to a deal.
That's interesting. Context is king. And I was mentioning before the show about Google's empire and how it's really in jeopardy right now because SEO is how they made their money. I mean, really, they almost became muscle bound to a certain extent because the SEO, the AdWord business got so successful that you'd go there and search for something. You got to scroll and scroll to get an organic link somewhere. And I learned the hard way that the organic links aren't all that organic either. If you're not buying AdWords,
Right.
you're not showing up in these organic. I mean, these, people have presumed now for years that Google is some sort of public service and they're just going to give you the correct answer that it knows. No, they're a for-profit business. YouTube is a for-profit business. LinkedIn, Instagram, all these guys, and they all pull the strings sooner or later when they need to make some money. So that's when it's like, oh, wait, why aren't we getting the results we were getting? Maybe because you're not spending enough. I mean, you just have to do that.
Don't tell anyone that. Don't tell anyone that.
I know. I'm in radio, so I have to be honest with people. I have to tell them what's going on. But this context stuff, we're saying before the show, we believe that text is such a rich medium for communication, but it's only because we have all these years of context in our heads that we can parse that information and we know who we're talking to, what they normally talk about. So all of that kind of gets carried along with you when you're walking through the world. Agents don't have that information. AI agents don't have that. So that's why you see all this focus now. That's why arguably IBM just bought Confluent, which was an interesting development because guess what? All the providers have their Kafka managed service. So they're like, oh man, that open source stuff will get you. It's all about the context. And throw it back over to David. At Sugar CRM, you have lots of context because you've been selling, you're doing the customer relationship management that requires information about products, services, customers, all kinds of things. That's context, right?
It is. Yeah, and I think if AI is going to really deliver in a business context, it's going to need all of that background, right? Like this is our overall sales process, all the sales stages, all the entrance and exit criteria, right? As part of CRM implementations, you're going to have to give the underlying models all of that background. You're going to have to teach them about your ideal customer profile or your unique sales propositions. The more context you can give to the underlying system, the better you're going to be able to guide sellers. And I think that's a huge change. It used to be in implementing CRM, you just need to load in the data, right? And do some configuration work. Now you need to provide content in CRM so that you can guide sellers to that next best action. You've got to give them the competitive information, the sales process information. I think CRM implementations are going to look really different over the next couple of years compared to what they've been since I started doing it in 1994.
Wow. That's pretty interesting stuff too. So you're right. We used to just load the simple flat files, CSV files into a system, and okay, these are the customers, these are prospects. So much of that stuff was so manual for so long. It reminds me of the earlier solutions, which were just absolutely dreadful. You put some rule in place that say you must include a note, and I'm like, okay. So half the people just stop using it. Half the
Totally.
people will do huge long notes that are very useful, but completely different from everyone else's notes. And then what happened? The systems were slow as all bejesus. They were like frozen molasses. And guess what happens when you're like, use that system? Forget about it. Just move on.
Right.
So the stuff, these insights, they have to be liquid in a sense. They have to be right there, fluidly available to you, right, Ray?
Definitely. And that fluidity is what really makes it work, because if you can actually take more steps or automate more steps in the process to get to an answer, you're actually going to come ahead, right? So here's the deal, right? I have a good friend that says this, like, if you're up against a grandmaster in chess, you're probably going to lose. But if you get 2 or 3 more shots for every move that the grandmaster in chess gets, you actually have a chance of winning, right? And that's really what we're trying to get to. We're getting at more at bats, more precise, and more importantly, that means you're going to actually have a higher success rate. And that's where we're seeing that automation and the agentic AI come together, because that's when we actually have the ability to not only know where to go hit, we actually going to hit with a higher level of precision, and that's going to actually drive your results. And so we're actually allocating resources to be more precise more often in the right area. That's where you're going to see some advantages in precision selling.
Well, that's interesting. Precision selling. I really like this term. And it makes a lot of sense because the other side of the equation, and we'll pick this up on the second segment here in just a minute, but the other side of the equation is that sales is a game of morale. And I've always said that morale is the single most important quotient of any organization, because when morale is high, good things are going to happen. When morale is low, you can have all the money, all the technology, great business plans, everything, and it's not going to happen because the morale isn't there. Morale is what drives people forward. It's what picks up the phone. Morale is what types the email and builds the proposal and gets everyone excited. And then the other thing, and this is really, really cool for salespeople, I guarantee every seller will agree with this. When you make a sale, you're riding high, man. You're like, yes, I made a sale. And then you can go make another sale because you're in a good mood and you're just rolling. And then you make another sale. Whereas if you're not making any sales, you're not getting anywhere. It's the opposite effect. So it's a very emotional roller coaster is selling. And we want to preserve that, but we want to keep it as positive as possible. So we want to soften any of the downsides and really embellish the upsides. And that's what keeps morale up and keeps people rolling. What do you think about morale in sales and those compensation plans, all those incentives that are supposed to get them rolling?
Yeah. Well, I think it's like a lot of things. Confidence breeds confidence, right? You look at hitting streaks in baseball. It's not because the
Right.
pitchers are any different or the
Right.
batting stance is any different. It's they start getting hits, they feel more confident, their mental mindset's different, and it begets more hits. I think that's true in sales as well. You have that confidence, you have that swagger, you convey that to your prospect, you convey that to your customer. They believe in what you're saying. So back to this, selling is the transference of belief. I think morale and winning builds that belief.
Yeah, you make an excellent point here about batting averages and the fact that batters get on a roll. And it's amazing because it is a head game. I mean, there's so much that comes into play. You have to see it, you have to understand the pitching, you have to kind of know where you want to go with these things. But and I love baseball. One of my greatest accomplishments is that my 12-year-old daughter loves baseball.
I
She
love
loves
it.
the Pirates. She trash talks the other teams. I'm like, yes, yes. And we've got, I mean, O'Neill Cruz, this guy, I saw him hit a home run last year. I told the wife, That's the fastest ball I've ever seen leave a bat in baseball. 30 seconds later, the announcer goes, "That is the fastest baseball ever." Like, wow, dude, I was right, dude. He just like 123 miles an hour off the bat or something. And that is because his mind was in the right place. You have the technique, you have all the stuff that leads up to it, but it's still the person in the moment. And that's where morale really plays its role. What do you think, Ray?
I think morale is everything, as Dave was saying, because here's the thing. Uh, if you're not confident about how you're selling, if you're not confident about the product, if you're not confident about your opportunity to sell, you're just going to fail. I
Right.
mean, this is all about confidence. And if you
Right.
can't drive that, you don't have a shot. And
Yeah.
so what we're noticing is like if you can arm your sellers with the right information, with the right insights so that
Mm.
they can build a pattern of being more confident, now you're actually talking about improving your sales team, not just morale, but you're improving their performance. And
Mhm.
so this is the number one problem with most SFAs and more sales products is because it was all designed for management. It was never
Totally.
designed for the salesperson. And so when we empower the salesperson, they have a shot at actually saying, oh, this was worth it, right? And now when we get to the point with AI and automation where we can actually collect everything contextually, so they're not having to type everything in because the data is being collected ambiently, now we actually have a shot for actually empowering your salespeople. And you can get back to your point of, salespeople actually are now empowered to actually do something as opposed to having the system work against them. And so comp plans are, I mean, they're important, but now you can actually get really creative with your comp plans because people are willing to trade more data for more insights for better comp.
Right. Well, and I can tell you one of the mistakes I've seen, and I've heard about this for 3 decades of being in business, comp plans that get changed when the salespeople become effective at it. It's like, wait a minute, like, what are you talking about? You told me if I sold these, I'd get all this extra money. They're like, oh, you're making too much money. There
I love
is that
moving your
factor
cheese.
that's out there, right? This, whether, oh, you're making too much money. What are you talking about? It's the salesperson, right? You got to reward your salespeople, right, David?
Yep. Yeah, and nothing makes me happier than a salesperson making too much money.
There
It's
you
a
Yeah, I mean,
fantastic. I mean, how can that not be a great scenario? I do
yeah, how
think,
can that not be good? I mean, this is ridiculous. Okay, it's like we're one of the only companies in our category where we don't have a cap on comp. Like, why would you do that? It's like
yeah, we
dumbest
don't
thing I've
cap
ever
it either.
seen.
That's
Like,
Yeah,
why
we
would
that's
you do
crazy.
this?
That's
we
crazy.
don't we don't cap it either. I think motivation. You talk about morale and motivation. I think sellers are the best sellers are internally motivated, and they see comp plans as a recognition of their efforts, a recognition of their performance. I don't actually think it's a comp plan that motivates. I think it's a comp plan that recognizes and rewards. I think when I go out looking for sellers, I'm looking for people who are competitive, who have a confidence, who can communicate clearly. There's some intrinsics, and a lot of those things are things that sellers value themselves on. And then when you pay them a whole bunch because they perform really well, they're like, yeah, I've deserved this, I've delivered. But it's not actually what's driving the behavior.
Yeah. Well, and to your point earlier, and this is something I'd like to dig deeper into, we now have so much context through these systems. It used to be that it took like overnight batch processes or like once a month or something, and that's a certain cadence you can get accustomed to. But now in this world of AI empowered technology, well, guess what? People have expectations that are very high. I want to be able to get to answers very, very quickly. And when you can feed your salespeople in real time with all sorts of good context, even when they're on the phone with someone, that's very empowering because now, like, some of the more sophisticated systems can even be listening into the transcript and then keying up ideas as someone's talking. Now, that is forward looking. And I
Yeah.
guess I'll throw it over to David to comment on that. Only go as far as you can go reasonably in your organization. Don't try to do too much too fast. But this is the objective to get where the salespeople have everything they could possibly need to continue the conversation, to ask better questions, and to keep that ball rolling. Right, David?
Well, and we keep telling sellers, go spend time with your customer, talk to them about things. And I think lots of times sellers aren't quite sure what to go talk about, right? If
Mm,
you can tee them up, if you can say, look, you've got a 10,000 product catalog, which is impossible for anyone to get their heads around.
right.
And we have enough insight and context to be able to say, these 5 customers aren't reordering these products. Go ask them why. What's
Right.
changed, right? Is it something we've done? Is it something you've done? And it gives them the confidence to be able to have that conversation, to have something to talk about that's meaningful to that customer and leads them in the right direction.
Yeah, meaningful conversations. That's a really good point, David. I'll throw it over to Ray. That one example he just gave is very compelling because here's something to talk about. This is called a leading indicator. It's like, huh, they're not buying these products from us anymore. What's going on? Did the market change? Is someone offering a better price? But when you can come with a very specific question that is highly relevant to the account, that's the kind of stuff the person on the other end is going to want to talk about, right, Ray?
It is. And I think when you're able to mine the database, mine actually all your interaction history over time and understand what questions work in what context, it gives you another weapon that you actually wouldn't have had before. Now you're armed with potential options that some of your best sellers have done within your different teams. That really gives everybody a reason to use their system. And so looking at, let's say, hey, you're selling to a mid-market manufacturer. They are looking for a system that they couldn't get to before, and you've not done all the objection handling, all the options are out there. That's awesome, right? Now you're like,
Mhm.
okay, let's go after each one. Let's go after each one. Let's think about the cadence. How often do you reach out? Oh, wait, the year end close is here. Oh, by the way, you know what? They just had a new CEO like 3 months ago. Wait, that actually changes the conversation. And they just hired
Totally.
another person. And so having that intelligence, that's the G2 you need.
Yeah. Well, it's like so in the data world, we talk about data pipelines. And what we're really talking about here is like content pipelines. It is data, but it's like a context pipeline that's in the background, kind of waiting for you to start asking questions, waiting for you to get on a call somewhere. And then if you have that context pipeline relatively fluid, lubricated, if you will, you're going to get the right information to the salesperson in time. They don't want too much. You don't want to
Right.
overload people, but they do want just enough to keep the conversation going, right, David?
Yeah, and I think some of the flaws of CRMs in the past is they take sellers into these giant dashboards and expect them to go pick the nuggets out of a whole bunch of different charts. It's
Hmm.
really hard to go figure that out. I think sellers want it served up to them, and I think that's where the promise of CRM from 30 years ago finally has a chance of coming
Hmm.
true, because AI can guide the sellers to that answer.
Or rigid sales methodologies that force
Right?
everybody to do the same thing. That's even worse, right? I was like, oh God, I don't like that model, right? You want sales by design. You want sales by context. You want people to have choice. And each of your sellers, I mean, while you want them to have some similar approaches, you're going to want them to figure out what's the right angle. Because
Right.
now that you've got AI there, you're counting on people's experience to figure out which tool to apply at which point in time.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you know what else you can do, and I'm curious, David, if you have some insights on this, is look for buy signs. Like I learned this working with Dr. Robin Bloor years ago. He would refer to this. I'm like, what is he talking about? Buy signs, like something that they say in the conversation, which goes, aha, so they are interested in this because they asked that question. Is that something that you've seen can be to some extent automated, or what do you think about that, David?
I think for sure. I think there are buying signals. Whenever you're buying enterprise software and you start talking about the details of the implementation,
Right.
you've moved beyond the decision of buying the software. You're actually
Yeah.
thinking about how you're going to go implement it and how you're going to go
Right.
roll it out, right?
Right.
Every, and this isn't just true of CRM, it's true of all enterprise software. You need to go buy the software, implement it, and roll it out. And all three of those things happen in succession. If people are talking about the decision after the one you're talking to them about, you know that those are good buying signals. And I think not all sellers have great ears. They're not tuned in to listen to those signals. So I think AI can play a huge role there.
That's funny. I do pretty good imitations, and I was cracking jokes to the wife about some guy we keep seeing on TV. He sells some kind of patch, and he has a great line. He goes, "If you're thinking about buying, that means you need it." And I was like, "This guy's thinking, right?
Right.
He's like, right. If you're thinking about it, that means there is a need that you have, which you believe this can solve. And so we want that, what you call it, trust or transference of belief, right, David? You want
Right.
to transfer that belief. Okay, I'll give you a shot with this with your product and then I'll check it out. But then the cool thing is now we can monitor and map lots more complicated processes than before. It used to be, oh, I can tell if this ad is working, or I can tell one bit or piece of the puzzle if it's working. But now we have the capacity to really do deeper analysis across context flows and workflows and opportunity windows and all that stuff.